Hello, everyone. I'm Sanjana Pandit, and welcome back to Infusions of Art, a mini-series dedicated to spotlighting some of Houston Methodist Hospital's renowned physician artists and artist caregivers. For today's episode, we will be hearing from Teresa Procter. Teresa is a speech-language pathologist, specializing in voice and upper airway disorders. She is a classically trained singer with joint clinical training and expertise in the evaluation and treatment of the voice. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Music from Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, and completed her Master of Music in Vocal Performance from Rice University at the renowned Shepherd School of Music. She received her Postbaccalaureate and Master of Arts in Communication Sciences and Disorders from the University of Houston. Her passion for the performing voice and voice habilitation led her to the Lake Shore Professional Voice Center in Metro Detroit for completion of her clinical fellowship in voice, swallowing, and upper airway disorders with Dr. Juliana Codino and Dr. Adam Rubin. Research endeavors have included publications and presentations at national and international levels on sociolinguistically diverse voices, acoustic assessments during COVID-19, neurolaryngology, clinical fellowship opportunities in voice, and post-surgical rehabilitation of the singing voice. Teresa is currently a licensed voice specialized speech language pathologist, at the Texas Voice Center at Houston Methodist renowned ENT specialists. So with that, I'd love to give a huge welcome to Teresa, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sanjana, for having me. It's just a delight, and it's amazing to find out all the different pathways that music and science have come in together. Hearing that, so I'm excited to share a little bit more about it with you.
I'm super excited for this interview. So I'd love to start off with, would you be willing to tell us about what age you became interested in singing and your sort of beginning journey with that?
Yes, I would love to. So I am the youngest of four siblings, and because there's a bit of an age difference, I actually had my first exposure to music through my siblings. Both my grandparents are singers, not necessarily in any sort of professional manner, but I had singing throughout the halls when we would visit family. And I will say that actually my first memory of music was hearing and seeing my sister play Maria in West Side Story. And I even thought at the time that her friend had died with the Tony and the whole act. And it was just such a emotional, beautiful experience. And she was the same sister who encouraged me to audition for Sound of Music when I was 7 years old. So my first role I got to share with her, she was a nun and I was Marta, and I can still remember some of those lines. And so there was really a familial experience to start with, and then it became something that just grew outward, and I ended up becoming almost family with a lot of the musicians that have been a part of my life as collaborative artists.
It sounds like music is family for you, whether it's your actual biological family or the family that you've created. That's awesome. So now, if you wouldn't mind sharing, Teresa, your journey from your vocal injury to where you are now, as a highly successful speech pathologist, what were some of the biggest hurdles you faced, and how did the arts play a part in helping overcome those obstacles?
Of course, of course. So I think I'd love to start and first say that I think it's quite unique in the music world how injuries are received and perceived. I will say that in our industry, we are not quite kind people when it comes time to recognizing a musician and artist who has an injury. I will say that there's a stigma that exists for those who are doing incredible feats with their vocal folds. When we are at a performance, when we are listening to a live performance in particular, like you are watching some incredible feats that the vocal fold in our body is doing. I think that's one of the things that's also hard about being a singer in particular, is that you carry your instrument around with you. And so we have found in our research that sometimes it's actually how we use our speaking voice that ends up influencing and impacting some of the irritation and inflammation that happens at the vocal folds outside of the singing voice. And so when I think about my journey to vocal injury and then even to being a voice specialized speech language pathologist, I will say that it was not an easy one. And there were many moments that were not as open as I would hope they would be because of my fear of what the community and the arts community and the music community would do and respond, thinking that, oh, my technique is poor, she didn't prepare well enough, she's not a smart musician. And I would say for any of those who are listening that are a musician and have experienced this, you are not alone. And this is something that I really hope we can continue to shape and rework within our industry. When I think about my journey, it was something that ended up being quite a surprise. I had a sickness that I was working with, and I was thankfully, after my studies at Rice University, was employed in doing singing works. I wasn't necessarily needing to take an admin or a temporary position job. I was able to find different contracts and continue my love of singing. But what that also meant was that I had a very large vocal demand on my vocal instrument, on my larynx, or my voice box, as often is referred to. And it was probably too much. And when you're sick, oftentimes the first thing we may notice is our voice changes, our voice gets lower, it feels rough, it's not as easy to talk, we get kind of a gravelly sound. And what that means is that the vocal folds often are inflamed. Of course, there are other things we would need to look at the vocal folds, but I had to do a lot of singing at this time with a cough and a cold. And because of that, I ended up having some inflammation on my vocal folds that wasn't necessarily able to be eradicated with just some therapy. And so this ended up being something where I worked with the Texas Voice Center at the time. It was a private practice, and Dr. Apurva Thekti was a laryngologist that I saw. And through that time, I was actually able to work with him, as well as a speech therapist, Jeremy Hathaway, and Dr. Ashwini Joshi, who I would say have been pivotal in my journey as a voice therapist now. I was actually back in school. I hoped to bring my love for music and my love for the autism community. I'm also Texas Program Coordinator and MC for Music for Autism. And so that's another thing I get to do here in Houston since 2016. And I loved that community. I wanted to help them further. And so I went back to school to be a speech therapist who was going to do music and music therapy-like exercises with those students, but found my way into the pathway of a voice rehabilitative specialist as a speech therapist in voice. And so that's how I found my way here. I will say that because I was met with such care as a patient, it really influenced my perspective of what I wanted to do as a profession and through my career. So again, I have a lot of thanks to the Voice Center, as well as Houston Methodist, from even the beginnings of my work as a singer and now as a speech language pathologist. If what you receive you can give tenfold, I would always love to do that, and then more. Houston Methodist, our eye-care values are integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. And I feel that was what I experienced, and something that I hope I can instill with each of my encounters daily, with whether it be patients that I'm seeing or patients that are in our lobby at the ENT department.
Do you have a particularly special moment that you can recall from a patient interaction? And if you have a specific moment, I just would love to know, how did you grow as a caretaker, as an artist, as a person from that interaction?
I'd love to speak about, an artist that I've been working with who is using their voice in a choir standpoint right now, as well as just a passion and a love. And through their journey, we recognized that there was one side of the vocal folds, or pardon, not one side of the vocal folds, but you have two vocal folds, and we call them vocal folds because it's a multi-layered. They used to be called vocal cords, and you may hear that interchangeably. It is truly interchangeable, but we say vocal folds often in the literature and our research because it is distinguishing those layers. But they had one side of their instrument, of their larynx, that one of those vocal folds just wasn't vibrating in the same pattern at the same time as the other one. They had a vocal fold paresis, is what we call it, where there's a slight immobility, meaning slightly not the same pattern as when they came together. And I will say that what I've loved working with this individual is that their goal was to be able to re-audition for the Houston Symphony Chorus, and to be able to feel that they were providing their best voice forward as part of the annual audition experience. And after working with this individual, as well as with one of our physicians and laryngologists, Dr. Procter and Dr. Yin Yu, through this opportunity, we were able to develop home practice and exercises that really targeted the voice and tried to help those vocal folds find more synchrony. And I love to share with you that I found out from them that after their audition, whereas before they hoped to get, certain contracts for the course, they ended up receiving a contract for every single one of the performances that they hope to do. And again, this isn't saying that, every moment we have is a success story like that in terms of like the magnitude, but if we can give a patient an ease to their voice, if we can make things have a little bit more control because of understanding and the education of what's happening, then I know that I've helped them become the clinician, is what I say. Is like, I don't want to be the one who's like, telling you. It's like more so, how can I influence what you know and what you should know about your voice in bringing your best voice forward with that. So that was fun. I guess that's one that came to mind.
Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah. I would love to know, how has your background in the performing arts, Teresa, helped you to be a better caregiver? Because you're a singer.
Yeah. So I still get to sing, not as often as, I would love if I could stop time, just like Harry Potter. But I would say that as a performer, I think, and as a musician, what I've loved from my early experiences with music is just the ability to approach each individual piece and therefore each individual patient with a very open mind and wondering, what can I learn from this piece? What am I going to be vulnerable in? And what can I influence in terms of stepping in forward with this idea of keeping things as relationship building as possible? I think that when I think back on my favorite moments as a musician, it's these collaborative experiences. I actually created my last master's recital all on collaborative works. And so I really made it a point that each piece that I was doing, it wasn't just, of course, a pianist and myself or a collaborative artist. Yes, of course, that's a beautiful relationship that is burgeoned through time, but I wanted to see like what other instruments could I bring in. And I think that perspective of learning different languages, working on different nuances with the voice has allowed me then to bring that ear as well as that perspective of flexibility and openness into my exam rooms and into the therapy sessions. What can I help them achieve for their functional goals, their goals that they would like to do in their daily life and conversations with individuals, being able to speak to family members, etc. It's a joy, and that's where I think it's so important as a musician that I recognize I'm a small part of this journey, and there's a bigger orchestra that we can help support.
If you had not pursued a career as a speech pathologist, what alternative career could you have considered?
Yes. So, as you know, and as I've shared, I loved music and I loved being an artist. And that was something that I definitely went for my undergrad in and was music. And I do think, though, that there were times that I would have loved to be a voiceover and do voices for animated films. I think it's just fascinating the different ways we can manipulate and shape our voice and make different characters and different emotions within those. And so I always thought it was fun. And I grew up with, the typical Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and it just became such a iconic moment for me to be able to like sing along. It's like, oh, I would just love to be behind the scenes and do that too. I think that was like my favorite. It was like the icing on the cake. My senior musical before I went to college, we did Beauty and the Beast, and I got to play Belle, and it was just a little town. It's a quiet village. Like it was just so fun to be able to do, and obviously that's a little snippet now, but it was just a great experience.
I will say Beauty and the Beast is very close to my heart as well because we did that in 8th grade. That was our 8th grade musical, and I played Lumiere,
Oh,
and it was so much fun.
oh, I love that. Lumiere, Lumiere. I love it. Was it the Beauty and the Beast Junior? Was it one of those? Or was it the full
Yeah,
production? The
it
junior?
was
Awesome.
Junior, Beauty and the Beast Junior.
I was like, oh, so great. Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's something about dressing up and putting on this show and performance that really, I think that connection with the audience, connection with your cast members, the musicians, it's out of this world.
On a bit of a different note, I'm curious, what is the number one benefit you see from being a singer who also treats vocal cords, or I guess vocal folds, I should say, as opposed to someone without a singing background?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think I can only speak to like where I feel this has helped me as a singer, being a speech pathologist. I think that my background and experience with being a singer allows me to have unique awareness of what I'm hearing in the voice and different ways to approach it. I think the beauty about speech therapy and being a behavioral therapist is having the creativity come in with the science. As a singer, I also then use that approach of like what I know about different styles. And for someone who isn't even interested in working on their singing voice, oftentimes we are exploring different parts of the range and different components of resonance. And if they're not comfortable or finding something really difficult, I feel as a musician, I have that flexibility to shift quickly and to find a different approach and see if that works. Again, it's this relationship always feeling of how can I best support the patient with their understanding and their knowledge about their voice. And so we put on many different hats with that. And for sure, singing many styles of music, different languages, different ensembles, solo, choir, chamber, it allows you to continually be truly flexible in how you're moving from one component to the next. And I think that's allowing me as a speech pathologist to really bring my musical training, indirect musical training into the therapy session.
You have said that when you were in high school, you told your dad you either wanted to be a singer slash musician or a nurse. And you didn't realize that there are ways to have both in your life, both medicine and the arts. So, as a high school student myself, I would love to know, what advice do you have for young, motivated students who are interested in pursuing a career in medicine and are considering how to balance that with an artistic talent of some sort?
Yes. Well, what I love is I think you and I can't even imagine the types of professions and careers that are going to be available to you when you graduate from high school, college, and that it's truly going to be our community, the population, society that's going to help build these amazing professions that we have no idea even exist right now. I do think that keeping your passions open to many different avenues is really important. More than ever, we need to continue to work on how we connect to each other. And that is something that I feel is so important when I was in both music and in athletics and in different academic pursuits like mock trial and speech. It just allows you to build more awareness of what and who you are. And with that, then leading into recognizing like what is fueling you, what is motivating you, what makes you most excited. And I think sometimes they're surprising ways. And for me, it was truly out of an experience where I was my most vulnerable as a patient that I realized my career and my vocation was right in front of me. And that was just a beautiful blessing that happened for me. So I hope, whether it, be not necessarily a eureka moment and a very distinct moment like I had, but that there is that opportunity within each of y'all's life to find that synergy and synthesis of the things that you love.
Do you have a favorite quote or a saying that captures how you feel about medicine, fine arts, life, anything?
Yes, so I definitely think that there are a couple that I think are beautiful, and they're actually from two different authors, and I would love to reference them if I may. I don't have them memorized, but one I think that all the authors from way in the past before you and I were born, one is by Victor Hugo, and that music expresses that which cannot be put into words. And as a physician, as a provider working with physicians and working in the medical center, we're always working with words, encountering what we're writing down, what we're experiencing with patients. But sometimes, again, it's those qualities of creativity and music that are within our therapy sessions that you just can't put into words what impact that allows a patient's voice to do when we find that component. And then the other one was by Henry David Thoreau, and he said, "When I hear music, I fear no danger, I am invulnerable." And what I love about that is the support I feel that, or what I glean from that quote is the support that music can bring us, as well as the strength that it can as well. And I think in our most promising and positive moments and in the lowest, there's a place for music, and there's a place for it to live within us, if we would so like to accept it. I'm just so excited that we continue to find the different ways of intersectionality between music and science, and I'm so excited for what the future will hold and the ways that we can't even imagine how they will intersect further.
Thank you so much for your time, Teresa. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me.
Thank you. No, appreciate the opportunity, and happy listening to everyone.
Thank you all so much for tuning in for day 6 of Infusions of Art. I hope to see you all in the next episode, and until then, take care and have a great rest of the day.